My brother's fiancée attacked me and left me injured. He texted, "Stay away from us." I said, gladly. Days later, their dream home loan collapsed after I pulled my name as guarantor. My name is Emily. I'm 29 years old, and the last thing I remember before my world shattered was the cold. The porcelain edge of my bathtub pressed hard against my shoulder blade, shockingly cold, as I lay crumpled on the tile floor. There was a sharp metallic taste flooding my mouth. Blood. A deep, pulsing pain radiated from somewhere behind my left eye, making it nearly impossible to focus on anything except the fog clouding my vision. And that's when I saw him. My brother, Nathan. He wasn't rushing to help me. He wasn't checking to see if I was breathing or calling 911 or doing any of the things a brother is supposed to do. He was leaning against the doorframe, casually scrolling through his phone with his thumb, his face completely blank. To him, my crumpled body wedged between the toilet and the tub was just an inconvenience. Like a spilled drink he didn't want to clean up. He stepped over my outstretched arm, careful not to let his brand new Nike Air Maxes touch my sweater, and walked out of my apartment without saying a single word. My phone had skidded across the tile during the fight. It lay near the sink, its screen lighting up the dim bathroom. I watched the notification appear with blurred vision. A text from Nathan. 6 words that felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. Stay away from us. Hot tears blurred my vision, but they weren't from the pain in my face. This was something deeper. Something that made the split in my lip feel like nothing at all. I stayed there for a long moment, the cold seeping into my bones, the silence of my apartment pressing down on me like a physical weight. Then something inside me shifted. The hurt didn't disappear. Instead, it crystallized. It became something hard. Something sharp. Something I could actually use. My fingers, which had been shaking seconds before, went steady. I reached for my phone with deliberate slowness and typed back a single word. A word that felt like it had been carved from ice. Gladly. I hit send. For Nathan, that word probably meant relief. It meant his inconvenient sister would finally disappear. It meant he and his fiancée could go back to planning their perfect life without me getting in the way. For me, it was a declaration of war. But to understand why this betrayal cut so deeply into my soul, you need to understand my family. You need to understand the system we'd all been living in. And in my family, there was only ever one star. It was never me. I was the responsible one. The one with the master's degree and the 6-figure salary. The one who'd worked 2 jobs through college to pay off my student loans while Nathan bounced from one gig to the next, always talking about his next big entrepreneurial idea. None of it ever materialized. But none of that seemed to matter to my family. Facts were just background noise. Nathan was the story. I can still see it clearly, as if it happened yesterday instead of 3 years ago. We were sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table. The turkey was perfectly golden. The sweet potatoes were steaming. And then Nathan announced he'd gotten a promotion at his sales job, his 3rd job in 2 years. But who was counting? My father actually stood up. He stood up from his chair and raised his glass like Nathan had just been elected president of the United States. To my son, he boomed, his voice carrying across the entire dining room. The future CEO of America. Everyone applauded. Even my cousins clapped like seals at a marine park show. I watched it happen like I was watching a play. Like I wasn't even really there. Later that night, I quietly mentioned to my mother that I'd just been headhunted by a Fortune 500 company. A massive promotion. A corner office on the 42nd floor. Stock options that would set me up for life. I was genuinely excited about it. I wanted to share this moment. My mother patted my hand. That's wonderful, sweetheart, she said absently. Her eyes were already drifting back toward Nathan, who was holding court at the other end of the table, telling some story that made everyone laugh. But don't let work consume you, she added, almost as an afterthought. Men don't like women who are too ambitious. You need to leave room for a family. Nathan caught my eye from across the table and grinned. He never said anything. He didn't have to. The pattern had been established long before that dinner. When our grandmother passed away 3 years ago, she left a small inheritance, about $30,000. My parents quietly redirected that money to help Nathan buy a Jeep Wrangler he absolutely didn't need. A luxury vehicle that he'd wanted, not needed. Meanwhile, I was told I was doing fine on my own and didn't need help with my condo down payment. I wasn't a daughter worth investing in. I was something else entirely. I was the family's emergency fund. A resource to be tapped whenever it was convenient. I was the invisible support beam holding up everyone else's life. Then came Victoria. When Nathan first brought her home, She seemed different from his usual string of girlfriends. She seemed almost fragile. Big brown eyes. A trembling voice. A sad story about growing up in foster care with no real family to speak of. For the first time, I looked at her and didn't see a threat to my brother's happiness. I saw someone like me. A woman trying to carve out a place in a world that didn't make space for her. When Victoria struggled to find work and couldn't afford her own place, I was the one who stepped in. I didn't just co-sign her lease. I spent hours with her rewriting her resume, coaching her for interviews, teaching her how to negotiate salary. I even covered her security deposit and first 2 months of rent. When she asked when I wanted her to pay me back, I told her we'd figure it out whenever she could. She cried and hugged me and told me I was the sister she'd always dreamed of having. I defended her to my friends when they whispered their doubts. When they suggested she seemed a little too good at playing the victim. That she always had a convenient excuse when things didn't work out. I shut them down. She just needs a chance, I insisted. She's family now. I wanted to believe that so badly. I wanted Nathan to have chosen someone who would actually add something to our family instead of just taking from it. But lying on that bathroom floor, blood dripping from my lip, the memory of my own kindness felt like poison in my throat. Lying on that cold tile, I pushed myself up slowly. Every muscle screamed in protest. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was barely recognizable. One eye was already swelling shut. My bottom lip was split wide open, still bleeding. A dark purple bruise was spreading across my cheekbone like spilled ink. I pulled out my phone and made one call. The only person I knew would believe me without question. My best friend since freshman year of college. A woman named Sophie. Sophie, I whispered, my voice breaking. It's me. Emily? Oh my God. What's wrong? You sound. She trailed off, sensing the panic in my voice. And then the story came tumbling out between sobs. The next morning, my entire body was a symphony of pain. A massive bruise had bloomed across my ribs, an ugly purple and yellow galaxy that made it difficult to breathe. My lip was swollen to twice its normal size. But my mind was calm, clear, frighteningly focused. I sat down at my desk, ignoring the throbbing in my skull, and opened my laptop. My hands moved with purpose. I navigated to my bank's secure portal, and there it was in crisp digital print, displayed like a confession. Primary guarantor, Emily Robinson, loan amount $850,000, property address 1247 Magnolia Drive, Charleston, South Carolina, their dream house. The one with the wraparound porch and the ancient oak trees and the gourmet kitchen. The one Victoria had posted about on Instagram 47 times in the past month. The one they couldn't get without me. My 780 credit score. My spotless financial history. My $140,000 annual salary. I was the only reason the bank had approved such a massive loan for a couple with inconsistent income and $60,000 in credit card debt between them. I was the entire foundation their dream was built on. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My cursor hovered over the link. Revoking my guarantee wasn't a simple click. It was a multi-step process specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of emotional decision made in the heat of the moment. But this wasn't heat. This was ice. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure? Withdrawing your guarantee may result in immediate loan cancellation. I clicked yes. Two-factor authentication. A code sent to my phone. Security questions. My first pet's name. My mother's maiden name. The bitter irony of that wasn't lost on me. And finally, an electronic signature on a legal document that explicitly warned me withdrawing your guarantee will almost certainly result in the cancellation of this loan agreement. I read every single word. Then, with a hand that didn't shake, I signed my name. A small digital signature. A bomb planted directly in the center of their perfect, curated life. I spent the rest of that day methodically building my case. I went to an urgent care clinic and got a full medical report. The doctor, a kind woman in her 50s, took detailed notes documenting everything. The laceration on my inner lip. The significant contusion on my ribs. The perorbital hematoma around my eye. Everything consistent with blunt force trauma. I took high-resolution photos of every bruise, every cut, every mark from every possible angle. I documented my injuries like an archaeologist documenting a crime scene. The pain was constant, but it fueled something cold and sharp inside me. Something focused. Something dangerous. The call came 36 hours later. It was Nathan. His voice was frantic, high-pitched, completely unrecognizable from the calm, collected brother I'd known my whole life. "Emily, what did you do?" He practically shouted. The bank just called. The loan fell through. They said the guarantor pulled out. What the hell did you do? I let the silence sit there for a long, delicious moment. Then I spoke, my voice flat and emotionless. I did what you asked, Nathan. I'm staying away from you. That includes my name, my credit, and my money. I hung up. That evening, someone pounded on my apartment door. Not knocking. Pounding. I looked through the peephole. It was them. Both of them. Their faces were twisted with rage and desperation. They looked almost feral. Emily, open this door, Victoria shrieked, her voice shrill enough to crack glass. You're ruining everything. Our house, our wedding, our future, please, Emily, Nathan begged, his voice breaking. We can talk about this. Don't do this to us. Think about Mom and Dad. Think about everything we've been through together. I just stood there, watching them through that small circle of glass. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. Just a deep, hollow emptiness. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry they'd been caught. They were sorry there were consequences. I calmly blocked both their numbers, disabled my doorbell camera notifications, and went back to my computer. I opened a new folder. I named it Evidence for Court. The first files I saved were the photos of my face. The next few days were hell. It started with my mother. She called, and her voice was dripping with disappointment. Not for what had happened to me, but for what I had done. Emily, your brother told me everything, she began. No preamble. No, how are you feeling? Just straight to judgment. How could you be so selfish? After everything we've sacrificed for you, you're destroying your brother's happiness over a little disagreement. A little disagreement. I felt the air leave my lungs. Mom, she punched me in the face. Nathan watched. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Emily. Victoria is under a lot of stress with the wedding. You probably provoked her. You know how you can be so opinionated, so competitive. You make people uncomfortable. Those words hit harder than any punch. I was the problem. I had always been the problem. Too independent. Too successful. Too much. I have to go, Mom, I said, my voice hollowed out. I hung up and slid down the wall in my hallway, sobbing ugly, gut-wrenching sobs. Not for the physical pain. For the family I'd never have. For the mother who would never protect me. For the little girl inside me who still, foolishly, wanted their love. Sophie found me like that an hour later. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside me and held my hand until the tears stopped. But the worst was still coming. A certified letter arrived. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a temporary restraining order filed by Victoria against me. The document was a masterpiece of fiction. It painted me as an unhinged, jealous woman obsessed with sabotaging my brother. It said I'd been harassing Victoria for months. It claimed I'd violently assaulted her in my own apartment. They were trying to flip the script, to legally brand me as the aggressor. For a moment, I felt pure despair. How could I fight this? It was their word against mine. The word of the golden couple against the difficult sister. But then I looked at my computer screen, at the folder labeled Evidence for Court, and a cold, hard smile touched my lips. I immediately called the lawyer Sophie had recommended. A sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Brennan, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for demolishing liars on the stand. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm on the horizon. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. I sat with Sophie on one side, Ms. Brennan on the other. Across the aisle sat Victoria, Nathan, and my mother. A united front of victimhood. Victoria was dabbing at her completely dry eyes with a tissue. My mother shot me a look of pure venom. Nathan refused to even look in my direction. Victoria's lawyer went first, painting a vivid picture of me as a jealous, unstable woman obsessed with sabotaging my brother's happiness. He spoke of my supposed history of emotional outbursts, my unhealthy attachment to Nathan. He twisted my career success into a weapon, suggesting my high-pressure job made me volatile and aggressive. It was sickening. And it was effective. Then Nathan took the stand. He looked small, pathetic. He spoke in a soft, trembling voice about how I'd always been difficult. How I'd stormed into their lives making unreasonable demands about the wedding. How he'd had to protect poor, fragile Victoria from my aggression. He even managed to squeeze out a tear, talking about how all he wanted was for his two favorite girls to get along. He was a phenomenal actor. I'll give him that. Then it was my turn. Ms. Brennan stood. Your Honor, she said calmly, my client will not be testifying about her feelings. She will not engage in the family drama you've just heard. She will be presenting facts. One by one, we laid them out. First, the high-resolution photographs of my face. The split lip. The swollen eye. The bruising along my jaw. Ms. Brennan placed them on the projector. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. The judge studied them, her expression hardening. Next, the official medical report from the urgent care clinic. Ms. Brennan read it aloud, her voice clear and steady. Patient presents with facial trauma consistent with blunt force impact. Lacerations to inner lip. Parorbital contusion. Rib contusion consistent with forceful blow or fall. The room went quiet. And then came the final piece. Your Honor, Ms. Brennan said, her voice ringing with authority, I would like to present one final piece of evidence. Security footage from the hallway outside my client's apartment building, time-stamped on the night of the alleged incident. A screen was angled toward the judge. The video was silent. But it was brutal. Unequivocal. Crystal clear. It showed me opening my door, smiling. It showed Victoria shouting, her face twisted with rage. It showed her lunging forward, shoving me backward with both hands so hard I disappeared into the apartment. And then it showed Nathan standing in the hallway, looking at his phone, annoyed, before he turned his back and walked away. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I watched their faces crumble. Victoria's jaw went slack. The color drained from her face like water from a broken glass. Nathan looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. And my mother put a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. The judge's gavel came down with a crack that made everyone jump. Petition for restraining order is denied, she said, her voice like ice. She looked directly at Victoria. And I would strongly advise you, Miss Cole, that filing a false report and committing perjury are serious crimes. As is assault. You're fortunate Ms. Robinson is not pressing charges today. She looked at Nathan. And you, sir, are a coward. The gavel came down again. This court is adjourned. As we filed out of the courtroom, Sophie hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. You did it, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You actually did it. My mother tried to approach me, her face a mess of shame and confusion. Emily, I didn't know. I gave her a cold, empty look and walked right past her. In the hallway, Nathan blocked my path. His face was pale. His eyes were red-rimmed. Emily, he croaked. I'm so sorry. Victoria, she gets like that sometimes. I didn't know it till I cut him off. I looked him dead in the eye. And for the first time, I didn't see my big brother. I saw a weak, hollow man. A coward hiding behind a woman's fists. You stood in that doorway, I said, my voice flat and steady. You stepped over my body. You texted me to stay away. You are not my brother. You're her shield. From now on, we are strangers. I turned and walked away. I never spoke to him again. The year that followed was one of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There were nightmares. There were days when the loneliness felt unbearable. There were mornings when I woke up and remembered that my own family had chosen to believe lies about me instead of believing their own eyes. But for every bad day, there were two good ones. I threw myself into my work. Not as an escape, but as a celebration of my own strength. I led my team to our best quarter in company history. I earned a promotion to senior vice president. At 30 years old, I became one of the youngest executives in the firm's 40-year history. I also started taking a glassblowing class on Thursday nights. Something I'd always wanted to do, but my family had dismissed as messy and pointless. There was something deeply healing about taking molten glass, something shapeless and fragile, and turning it into something beautiful with my own two hands. I was reshaping my life, one piece at a time. My chosen family rallied around me. Sophie was my rock. My real friends, the ones who'd seen Victoria for what she was all along, surrounded me with love and laughter. One evening, I hosted a dinner party in my condo. The room was full of voices and laughter and clinking glasses. It was warm and bright and real. This was family. The one I'd built. The one I'd earned. A few months ago, a letter arrived. I recognized Nathan's handwriting immediately. My hand didn't tremble. I held it for a long moment, feeling nothing. No anger. No curiosity. Just quiet stillness. Out of sheer curiosity, I opened it. It was exactly what I expected. A rambling, self-pitying apology. He and Victoria had broken up, apparently. There were restraining orders on both sides. He was in therapy. He was working on himself. He was sorry. He wanted his sister back. I thought about all the years I'd craved his approval, his protection, his acknowledgement. And I realized I didn't need it anymore. My peace was my own. My strength was my own. I didn't need him to validate either one. I tore the letter in half, then in quarters. Then I dropped it in the recycling bin. Now, a year and a half later, I'm standing on the balcony of my condo. The sun is warm on my face. I'm watering a small succulent I bought after the court case. A stubborn little thing that refused to die no matter how much I neglected it. This morning, I noticed something new. A tiny yellow flower had bloomed at the top. I used to think strength meant not having scars. But I know better now. It's about what you grow from them. I survived not just the assault, but the deeper wound. The betrayal of people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And I learned that the most important home you can ever build is the one inside yourself. I take a deep breath of fresh air. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel completely, utterly free. Thank you for listening to my story.